This presentation slide features a 3x3 grid icon positioned in the center. This is typically a visual element indicating menu or section selection, suggesting either that specific content has not yet loaded or that it symbolically represents the various topics to be covered. Therefore, it is difficult to ascertain specific economic indicators or market trends based on this screen alone. Further information needed for developing investment strategies will be derived from the detailed data and analysis presented in subsequent slides. This slide defines several key terms and metrics. First, gross profit retention is calculated as the year-over-year gross profit growth of all existing quarterly Cash App cohorts, averaged over the last 4 quarters, excluding BNPL products' gross profit and contra revenue. It also includes the year-over-year gross profit growth of all existing quarterly Square cohorts, averaged over the last 4 quarters, excluding gross profit from hardware, Caviar, PPP loans, and Weebly prior to the acquisition. A Square cohort represents new sellers onboarded to Square during a given period for Square. Next, a transacting active is a Cash App account that has at least one financial transaction using any product or service within Cash App during a specified period. A transacting active for a specific Cash App product has at least one financial transaction using that product during the specified period and is referred to as an active. Examples of transactions include sending or receiving a peer-to-peer payment, transferring money into or out of Cash App, making a purchase using Cash App Card, earning a dividend on a stock investment, and paying back a loan, among others. Certain of these accounts may share an alias identifier with one or more other transacting active accounts. This could represent, among other things, one customer with multiple accounts or multiple customers sharing one alias identifier, for example, families. Additionally, primary banking active (PBA) is a Cash App account that receives inflows from ACH or certain original credit transactions relating to earned wages, excluding tax refunds and ACH transfers, or spent at least $500 per month across Cash App, including Cash App Card, Cash App Pay, Afterpay through Cash App, and ACH Bill Pay during a specified period. Lastly, modern earner refers to a segment of the workforce that earns income from multiple dynamic sources including hourly wages, gig work, and freelancing. This slide presents definitions for Square's key metrics. First, slide 4 and 21 defines Square Gross Payment Volume, or GPV, as the total dollar amount of all card and bank payments processed by sellers using Square, net of refunds. Constant currency growth is calculated by assuming international results in a given period are translated from local currencies to the US dollar at rates consistent with the monthly average rates in the comparative prior period, considering the portion of our business operating in markets outside the US, and potential foreign exchange rate fluctuations. Next, slide 4 explains commerce enablement volume, which includes GPV from Cash App Card, Cash App Pay, BNPL products, and Cash App Business, and will include Tap to Pay GPV starting in Q1 2026. Slide 13 introduces the inflows per transacting active metric, calculated by dividing total inflows in the quarter by the monthly actives for the last month of the quarter, reflecting fund inflows within the Cash App ecosystem. Slide 4 and 15 defines Cash App consumer lending origination volume, encompassing originations from Cash App Borrow and BNPL products. Finally, slide 22 details the Square Commerce Enablement, excluding hardware, monetization rate and the Square Financial Solutions monetization rate. Both metrics measure the profitability of Square Commerce Enablement and Square Financial Solutions, respectively, relative to their total GPV, which is crucial for understanding the revenue contribution from each business segment including Square Payments, software, loans, instant deposit, and Square Card. These definitions serve as essential benchmarks for comprehending Square's business performance. This slide presents the reconciliation of the company's adjusted operating income. First, as of March 31, 2026, there was an operating loss of $171,990. However, after adjusting for items such as amortization of technology assets, acquisition-related costs, restructuring charges, and share-based compensation expenses, the adjusted operating income significantly improves to $727,672. Next, observing the quarterly trend from March 31, 2025, to December 31, 2025, operating income shows a steady increase. Notably, the quarter ended June 30, 2025, recorded $484,293, and by December 31, 2025, it saw a slight rise to $485,371. An interesting point is the adjusted operating income margin, which dropped from 20% on March 31, 2025, to 18% on September 30, 2025, before recovering back to 20%. This indicates that fluctuations in one-time expenses or amortization of assets in each quarter impacted the adjusted operating income, suggesting that investors should closely examine these adjusted items. This table illustrates the reconciliation to adjusted EBITDA, which represents earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. Specifically, for the period ending March 31, 2026, the reported net income loss attributable to common stockholders was a significant loss of $308,681. However, after adding back net income loss attributable to non-controlling interests and accounting for expenses such as share-based compensation, restructuring share-based compensation, depreciation and amortization, acquisition-related and integration costs, contingencies, restructuring and other charges, interest expense, net, remeasurement loss on Bitcoin investment, other expense, provision for income taxes, loss on disposal of property and equipment, and acquired deferred revenue and cost adjustment, the adjusted EBITDA for March 31, 2026, reached $1,010,221,000, indicating a substantial turnaround into profitability. The adjusted EBITDA margin for this period stands at 35%, likely on an annualized basis. Examining the quarterly figures, adjusted EBITDA was $812,794,000 for the quarter ended March 31, 2025, rising to $891,422,000 for June 30, 2025, then declining to $832,662,000 for September 30, 2025, before recovering to $929,690,000 for December 31, 2025. The significant increase to over $1 billion for the quarter ending March 31, 2026, shows a positive upward trend, suggesting potential improvements in profitability. This table presents Block, Inc.'s unaudited consolidated gross profit. Within the revenue section, commerce enablement revenue stands out as the largest contributor, reaching $2,938 million as of March 31, 2026. This figure represents an increase compared to the same period last year, indicating positive growth momentum. Financial solutions revenue and Bitcoin ecosystem revenue also show a steady upward trend, leading to a total net revenue of $6,057 million. Moving to the cost of revenue, commerce enablement costs are the highest at $1,317 million, with Bitcoin ecosystem costs also amounting to $1,728 million. The total cost of revenue, summing up all these expenses, is $3,148 million. Consequently, the calculated gross profit is $2,909 million, signifying a substantial increase from the previous year and suggesting an improvement in the company's profitability. This trend will serve as a crucial reference point for future investment decisions. This slide presents Block Incorporated's consolidated gross profit figures on a quarterly basis. As of the quarter ended March 31, 2025, total net revenue reached $5.772 billion, marking a 22.7% increase year-over-year. This growth was primarily driven by strong performance in commerce enablement revenue and Bitcoin ecosystem revenue. On the cost of revenue side, total cost of revenue decreased by 14.7% year-over-year to $3.482 billion, with a notable reduction in Bitcoin ecosystem costs. Consequently, gross profit stood at $2.290 billion, demonstrating an impressive 41.8% growth compared to the same period last year. Overall, Block Inc. is showing significant improvement in profitability, which can be interpreted as a positive signal for investors. This slide presents the revenue, cost of revenue, and gross profit for Cash App on a quarterly basis. Looking at the revenue segment, as of March 31, 2026, total revenue stands at $3.871 billion, showing a robust growth trend compared to previous quarters. Notably, growth in commerce enablement revenue and Bitcoin ecosystem revenue is significant. Moving to the cost of revenue, it was recorded at $1.963 billion as of March 31, 2026. The gross profit, calculated as the difference between revenue and cost of revenue, reached $1.908 billion, indicating a substantial increase year-over-year. This suggests that Cash App's profitability is continuously improving. This table presents the total revenue and cost of revenue for Cash App, comparing the period ending March 31, 2025, with prior quarter data. Looking at the revenue segments, commerce enablement revenue reached $900 million as of March 31, 2025, an increase from $832 million in the prior year period. Financial solutions revenue stood at $649 million, up from $566 million in the prior year period. Bitcoin ecosystem revenue, however, decreased to $2,329 million from $2,775 million in the prior year period, though it represents a slight dip from $2,462 million as of September 30, 2024. Consequently, total net revenue decreased to $3,879 million, compared to $4,173 million in the prior year period. On the cost of revenue side, commerce enablement costs were $176 million, financial solutions costs were $73 million, and Bitcoin ecosystem costs amounted to $2,237 million, showing minor fluctuations compared to the prior year periods. Notably, the Bitcoin ecosystem costs represent a significant portion of the total cost of revenue. Based on these revenue and cost structures, the segment gross profit was calculated at $1,380 million, an improvement from $1,259 million in the prior year period, indicating a positive trend. This suggests an overall strengthening of Cash App's profitability. This slide presents unaudited quarterly gross profit figures for Square. Looking at revenue first, for the 3 months ended March 31, 2026, total net revenue reached $2.112 billion, an increase of over 14% compared to the same period last year. This growth is primarily driven by robust performance in commerce enablement revenue and financial solutions revenue. Bitcoin ecosystem revenue stood at $28 million, a notable change from zero in the prior year. Moving to the cost of revenue, the total cost of revenue for the 3 months ended March 31, 2026, was $1.131 billion, showing a lower rate of increase than total net revenue. Notably, costs associated with commerce enablement and financial solutions appear to be well managed. As a result of this revenue growth and cost control, the segment gross profit for the 3 months ended March 31, 2026, amounted to $982 million, an increase of over 9% year-over-year. This indicates improving profitability for the company, and it's particularly noteworthy that the Bitcoin-related business is now beginning to contribute positively to earnings. This table presents Square's gross profit, or operating profit margin, on a quarterly basis. Looking first at the revenue segments, commerce enablement revenue starts at $1,627 million and shows a steady upward trend, reaching $1,751 million. Financial Solutions revenue fluctuates slightly between $226 million and $220 million but generally remains stable. Bitcoin ecosystem revenue is negligible. The total net revenue begins at $1,852 million and shows a gradual increase up to $1,970 million, indicating a positive pattern. Now, examining the cost of revenue, costs associated with commerce enablement have increased alongside revenue, from $947 million to $1,040 million. Costs for financial solutions remain around $5 million, and there are no Bitcoin ecosystem costs. Amortization of technology shows minor increases or decreases. Overall, the cost of revenue fluctuates between $954 million and $1,047 million. Synthesizing these changes in revenue and cost of revenue, the total gross profit starts at $898 million and shows a slight increase to $924 million, indicating stable growth. This suggests that the company's core business segments are maintaining solid profitability. The table before you is part of the reconciliation section, detailing Square's quarterly operating metrics in millions of dollars. Specifically, let's focus on the Square Commerce Enablement gross profit. As of March 31, 2026, this stood at $706 million, a decrease from $726 million in the preceding quarter, December 31, 2025. Furthermore, when we look at the Square Commerce Enablement gross profit excluding hardware, that is, after deducting the contribution from hardware, the figure for March 31, 2026, is $747 million. This also represents a decline from $769 million reported on December 31, 2025. Observing the trend across the entire table, we see a gradual decline from $814 million on June 30, 2025, to $803 million on September 30, 2025, and $769 million on December 31, 2025, further decreasing to $747 million by March 31, 2026. This trend indicates a potential slowdown in the profitability of Square's core commerce enablement services, suggesting that investors should closely examine the reasons behind this profitability shift and its future outlook.